All right, let's dive right in. We're about to unpack one of the biggest, most aggressive industrial shifts of our time, the explosive global expansion of Chinese electric cars. And make no mistake, this is way more than just new vehicles hitting the road. This is the story of high-stakes strategy, immense pressure, and a calculated assault on a century-old automotive order. So let's start with a question that really gets to the very heart of this whole global drama. Because the answer isn't just about crowded parking lots or a few good deals at the dealership. No, the answer is the trigger for a geopolitical and economic shockwave that is literally reshaping the entire world of mobility as we know it. And that shockwave? It has a number. In 2024, China shipped out a staggering 5.5 million vehicles. Now, this wasn't some gradual increase. This was a floodgate opening, unleashing an absolute torrent of cars onto the world market and creating a tectonic shift in the auto industry. And to put that shift into perspective, for decades, for as long as most of us can remember, the global auto trade was dominated by two names, Japan and Germany. Well, in 2024, that era officially ended. China didn't just join the top tier, it blew right past the old guard to become the world's undisputed #1 vehicle exporter. But here's where the plot really thickens. This global flood, it isn't reaching every shore. There is a massive, continent-sized piece of the map that remains almost completely untouched by this wave. And that creates a central mystery. Why isn't this happening everywhere? The answer is this number. That wall is a 100% tariff, a trade barrier so high it's really more like a fortress. This single policy has effectively sealed off the entire North American market, cleaving the automotive world in two and setting the stage for the strategic battle we're all witnessing today. You know, to really understand this aggressive global push, we have to look at the crucible where these companies were forged. This whole thing, it isn't just a story of ambition, it's a story of pure survival, born from China's hyper-competitive, almost gladiatorial domestic market. And here is the absolute crux of the issue. Look at this massive, almost unbelievable gap. China has the factory capacity to build nearly twice as many cars as its own market could ever possibly absorb. This colossal overcapacity lit the fuse on a brutal internal price war with a simple, terrifying mandate for every single CEO: export or die. But that kind of pressure cooker, it had an unintended consequence. It didn't just create survivors, it created champions. The domestic crisis forged these battle-hardened companies, forcing them to become incredibly fast, wildly innovative, and ruthlessly efficient. They literally turned a domestic crisis into a global strategic advantage. So now let's look at the arsenal that makes this global conquest even possible. Because these companies aren't just winning on price. They've built this multifaceted competitive advantage that the legacy automakers are finding incredibly difficult to counter. Their competitive edge is really built on three foundational pillars, and it's the combination of speed, scale, and technology that creates the systemic advantage. It's challenging an old guard where automakers might be good at one or two of these, but almost never all three at once. First up, a speed that is just plain disruptive. While a legacy automaker takes 3 years, or even more, to go from a design sketch to a car rolling off the line, a Chinese competitor does it in just 18 months. Think about that. Western companies are designing cars for a future that has already arrived for their rivals. Second, a scale that translates directly into an almost unbeatable cost advantage. By dominating the entire EV supply chain, especially batteries, they can produce cars at price points Western manufacturers simply can't touch. I mean, we're talking about modern, capable EVs like the BYD Seagull for around $11,000. It's just a different ballgame. And finally, technology. And let's be clear, this isn't an afterthought, it's a weapon. We're talking about revolutionary battery safety, like BYD's Blade battery, which is literally designed to be punctured without catching fire, or next-gen charging that could allow for a full recharge in just 5 minutes. And then there's the in-car experience, the smart cockpit that behaves more like a smartphone on wheels than a car, with constant updates and an interface designed by software companies, not car companies. So now we see this incredible arsenal. Let's look at how it's being deployed on the global chessboard, because this is not a random expansion. Oh no, this is a highly strategic campaign with very clearly defined theaters of operation. And that campaign has created a sort of split-screen world. On one side, you've got rapid, aggressive conquest in open markets, Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America. On the other side, you have near total containment in the protected market of North America. It's really a tale of two completely different realities playing out at the same time.
This containment is achieved through what you can only really call a tariff fortress. That 100% tariff in the US isn't just a tax, it's a geopolitical wall. It's designed to completely negate the price advantage we talked about, making direct competition impossible and creating this totally isolated ecosystem.
But even in those conquered territories, it is not a simple path to the consumer. A car with a very competitive baseline price of around $35,000 still has to navigate shipping costs, a 10% EU tariff, and then a 19% value-added tax. All of that brings the final price tag for a German consumer up to nearly 45,000 euros. But the story doesn't end with tariffs and exports. Not even close. That's just Act 1. The real threat, the long-term strategic play, is now evolving into its next, more permanent and, frankly, more dangerous phase. Faced with these tariff fortresses, the new strategy is something called glocalization. And the logic is simple, but it is powerful. If you can't ship them in, you build them there. It's a pivot from being an exporter to becoming a local manufacturer, embedding themselves inside the very markets they want to conquer. And I want to be crystal clear. This is not a theoretical plan for the future. It is happening right now. BYD is building a massive plant in Mexico, right on North America's doorstep. Chery is taking over a former Nissan facility in Spain. Leapmotor and XPeng are setting up shop right inside the heart of the European Union. The invasion is no longer coming from the sea, it's coming from within. And as these companies expand globally, a brutal consolidation, a great shakeout is happening back home. That same domestic price war that forged them is now culling the weak. Of the hundreds of EV startups that existed just a few years ago, the vast majority are gone, ensuring that only the strongest, most formidable companies will survive to lead this global charge. And these are the likely survivors you're looking at. You have the vertically integrated giant, BYD, the global conglomerate, Geely, the tech-first challengers like Enmel and XPeng, and maybe the ultimate wildcard, the consumer electronics disruptor, Xiaomi. The result is going to be a smaller group of leaner, more powerful, and truly global competitors. So this entire tectonic shift, from domestic price wars all the way to global glocalization, it leaves us with a provocative and maybe even an unsettling question. The entire 20th century was defined by cars built in Detroit, in Wolfsburg, in Toyota City. As we look at all this, we have to ask, will the 21st century be defined by cars from Shenzhen?